Okay, so when HBO's new show, The Idol, started, there was a lot of controversy. There were reports of chaos on set. But also, the people behind The Idol have this reputation for making art that you might say is kind of sleazy. Well, the last episode of The Idol just aired. Today, was this show worth all that fuss? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Listen, first, I should tell you, when The Idol came out a few weeks back, we did have a group chat on the show, on Commotion. But let me just refresh your memory really quickly. So this is an HBO show. It's co-created by the singer The Weeknd of The Weeknd fame, and also Sam Levinson, who's the mastermind behind Euphoria. It is about a pop star named Jocelyn. She's played by Lily Rose Depp, and her life is taken over by this hustler named Tedros. His name's Tedros, for those wondering, played by The Weeknd himself. The show was supposed to be a satire of the music industry, but from the first couple of episodes to a lot of critics, it just kind of felt like this is like a bad soft porn flick with like slightly better than average soundtrack. Here's what our panelist Sarah Ty Black said on Commotion last month about Sam Levinson's direction.
Honestly, it's kind of depressing. It's soulless. It's self-serving. It's so self-involved. Like, his characters don't even feel like they belong to themselves. It all feels just like masturbatory. It's just really reactionary, misogynist BS. And I think that the way he uses women to do this is so gross.
Sarah Ty going in. Pretty harsh words, but a lot of people felt the way that Sarah Ty does. And The Idol ended up being absolutely just ruined. I mean, wrecked by critics. It has a 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The Guardian flat out called it one of the worst programs ever made, which is a big statement to make. But now that the show is actually wrapped up this past weekend, we get to ask, was the whole thing really that bad? We have two TV critics here. Hunter Harris writes the pop culture newsletter Hung Up. Nate Jones, who writes for Vulture. And listen, I'm going to say hello to both of you. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to get into this. I'm feeling just bursting with energy about The Idol. Welcome to Commotion, Nate and Hunter.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Listen, we should give people a warning. If you haven't watched The Idol, there's gonna be spoilers in this conversation. I'm comfortable with us spoiling the show in order to actually like talk about what it means if there's meaning to be found. Nate, I'm going to start with you on this one. You wrote the piece that said, hey, The Idol is not that bad. Here's how you might get into the show. You've now had a chance to watch the finale. How are you feeling about your initial take of The Idol? It's not that bad.
Yeah, I wrote that story because it was getting so savaged by everybody online, and I started to feel bad for it. You know, these are two people I'm not generally fans of. I think The Weeknd is fine. I really haven't cared for Sam Levinson's work at all before this. Yeah. And yet something about like the vitriol made me almost want to like befriend it. It's like when there's a kid at school who's getting bullied and you're like, no, like I'm going to stand up and be this kid's friend. And then you take him home and you're like, oh, this kid's maybe a little unpleasant. So I will say that, like, on an individual scene level, I think there are parts of the show that work. I think whenever the show aims for comedy, when it is aiming for sort of industry satire, this kind of black-hearted, sort of acidic tone, I think that it lands. When it's trying to do the other half, which is the erotic thriller elements of it, I think those ones kind of don't work.
I think that's a pretty generous reading of you to say, like, you know what, like these scenes do have a heart, do have something to communicate. What about you, Hunter? Did the finale work for you at all?
I think the finale was one of the better episodes for the first half of it. I liked more of the music stuff. That is definitely the strength of the show, is like seeing the performances, seeing like people who actually make music for a living, like Moses Sumney and Troye Sivan. But then like just the stupidest twist at the end, like I will call it like, and you know, to Nate's point, I didn't think it was like as bad as people were saying. It's like the stuff that was going viral, I think were mostly intentional choices by The Weeknd. Like he said carte blanche instead of carte blanche.
100%.
That was obviously intentional. It's just that The Weeknd is not very good at acting that sort of insecurity, maybe. But anyway, I digress. But I think that the twist at the end was just so stupid and so like, actually, what are we doing here? It seemed like such a retrofit. Like people think the show is anti-feminist, so we'll make it super feminist. And by making it super feminist, it was like not.
I would just like to play for people a clip of The Weeknd saying carte blanche because I had nightmares about this. Let's play it.
What do you think about I'm a Freak?
The song?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Fine?
It's middle of the road, not enough of a reinvention, manufactured bad girl. When was the last truly f***ing nasty, nasty, bad pop girl?
All right, let's say you had Carte Blanche, right? What would you do?
Oh no! Oh no, Nate. Every time I hear that, I go, okay, is this show a disaster? Is this show trying to be aware that it's a disaster? I mean, there was so much controversy leading up to the show that I kind of feared that nothing that actually happens on the screen could live up to the stories that we had before the show actually aired. So you finally arrive at this point where the show comes to air, and the big twist that we're talking about in the finale is we find out that actually Jocelyn suddenly, who's been disempowered for this whole show, suddenly has the upper hand over Tedros. Did the show feel earned to you, or did that ending kind of feel retrofitted to the backlash that it received kind of earlier on in the chaos of the production?
Well, I think the whole show was I think it was written and shot before all that backlash happened. So I don't think it was, a purposeful response to that. But yeah, I sort of agree with Hunter where it does get at the fundamental flaw of the show, which is we don't really know how Jocelyn feels about Tedros.
Right.
And the fact that this character was able to do a complete 180 from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode, and both felt equally plausible character choices, I think was a function that, it's like what Hunter said, like, oh, the first half of this episode was really good. That's sort of the first half of every Idol episode is like good and kind of fun. And then the second half of the episode is like, okay, and now we're going to get to Jocelyn and Tedros. And those scenes they just kind of fall flat because they never were quite sure, like, is she totally in love with this man? Does she like him but resist him? Is she totally under his sway? And the show seemed to toggle between those three modes, sort of willy-nilly.
So I just want to play you guys, because it is a show about music, and there's lots of wonderful musicians in the show. Troye Sivan, what are you doing? Why, Troye, you have other things to do with your time. For example, give us a new album. Why are you doing this right now? Susanna Sun, someone should let Susanna Sun record like a full-length album instead of doing whatever this is. Moses Sumney, I love Moses so much, but also it was just a mystifying choice for his career to be in the show and play these characters. But because so much of the show is music, I just want to play some of the music. Let's hear the Susanna Sun song for just a moment.
That's my family. Oh, we don't like each other very much. Oh, I'm okay with that. But it breaks my mother's heart.
So, Hunter, Susanna plays this character, Chloe. You're making a face. I haven't even gone to the question. You're like, I don't know about this. But she plays this. Like, she plays this character, Chloe, who's sort of supposed to be like this quote-unquote pure heart. There's something about the way that Sam Levinson actually chooses his cast members fairly well, to the point where like a Sam Levinson show never completely fails based on casting, because these people I do think are able to carry the scenes. The songs that she performs in the show are kind of wonderful to me, but then narratively it kind of completely ends up failing these characters. Is that just the MO? Is that what we just expect from Sam Levinson at this point?
I think, yeah. I think for everything that makes a Sam Levinson show bad, it usually doesn't fail on like visually or in terms of casting or even like production design. I think a lot of the stuff he excels at managing those aspects. Although I have to disagree. I'm sorry. I don't like the family song. Like Kendall Roy is like crying in the club right now. That song is like someone who reads the newsletter called her like baby Regina Spektor. And it's like, that's all I hear now.
You don't want to be like at a massive stadium show and she comes out at the opener, this random 17-year-old.
I would be like, I'm sorry, what? I came to say that I'm a freak.
So I'm a Freak is the big Jocelyn song. And Nate, like, I'm a Freak is doing numbers, as a matter of fact. Like, there's something about the success of I'm a Freak outside of the context of the show. Was this the whole point all along? Are they having a laugh at us?
Excuse me. The song is called "World Class Sinner," which, if you listen to
I apologize.
If you listen to the full version, you'll know are lyrics from the bridge, which we never hear in the show. Yeah, I think you asked earlier: was the hubbub around the Idol going to be bigger than anything that happened in the show? And I think maybe that was a possibility, if not for "World Class Sinner," which I think, in a strange way, does have this weird cultural life in that it's not good, And it's not like bad enough to be ironically bad, but it's in this weird liminal space where you're just like, what is this? But it, as you and I'm sure many listeners, like once you hear it, does have that pop thing where it doesn't really leave your head.
I
think it has. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, you got. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it has that sort of TikTok quality where it's like, I don't really know what the song is talking about or why it's so good, but it's like just digestible enough that I'm like, oh, I want to hear it 5 times in a row.
I think that is actually, I think you also just explained the entirety of Sam Levinson's career, right? Like there's something about Sam Levinson visuals to me that are so appealing. There's a shot where Jocelyn is coming down the stairs. I think it's in episode maybe 4. And you look at it and you're like, this should be like a giant photograph. Like someone should blow this up. It looks just incredible. And as you said earlier, Nate, there's something about the way that he sort of constructs his scenes that you're like, is this working? I can't tell if this is working. But then when you kind of zoom out, it doesn't seem to add up to a lot. And I think that's kind of my problem here is that when you get to that ending of episode 5, you go, did I just see what I think I saw? Like, is that really what just happened? And you spend a bunch of time trying to figure out whether it narratively makes sense or not. Whereas, and to me, like that's a failure of a TV show. If I'm sitting there being like, did they earn this? Did they not earn this? Like, it should at least narratively hit you and kind of make sense. No, that's the least we can ask for.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of this sort of goes back to the way that the show is made, where it is very heavily improvised, and it seems like there is an element of this where they are just sort of making things up as they go along, so it makes sense. Like in a moment sometimes that it'll play well because they're like, oh, this was a moment that we caught an improv that worked well. But then when you zoom out and try to stitch them together, all these things sort of feel like they're kind of happening out of nowhere, kind of like the last scenes of Game of Thrones, where things just like happen and you're like, okay, I guess.
Look, Mike, if you insist. Hunter, we should talk about The Weeknd, if we must. You wrote this hilarious piece about The Weeknd and how he's been defending the idol on Twitter. He's been responding to just normal people who are like, I'm not sure I like the show. And then he will he's The Weeknd, millions of followers. He'll quote tweet them and say, oh, you're wrong for this, and he'll trash talk them back. This is a guy who's built the entirety of his career on being unavailable, on not doing interviews, on the mystique of he's inaccessible. And suddenly he's extremely accessible and we have his opinion at every turn. What did you make of the way that he kind of undercut his own aura?
I mean, The Idol, bad show, but incredible level of posting. Truly Hall of Fame post from The Weeknd. I think that what we're seeing is that he's embarrassed. I think he wanted to be taken seriously as an actor. I absolutely believe that he really cared about the show and probably thought it was magnificent. And then you watch it. I don't even know how you could feel satisfied as just a viewer. But I'm sure as someone who made it, you're feeling a little bit spurned. He's only been very successful. And this is I would say a major misstep, certainly that he can recover from. But when you're online responding to some guy in Arizona who has 500 followers, something has gone very wrong. Your feelings are very hurt. I think that's what we're seeing.
And that is why Nate will bring you home and try to be like, I'm sorry they're bullying you, but it actually turns out you are a little bit annoying. Hunter, Nate, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here to break down The Idol.
Thank you for having us. You're our family.
Culture critics Nate Jones and Hunter Harris, both in New York. The Idol, if you must, is streaming now on Crave. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Okay, we are going to talk about the 70s for a moment. Take a listen to this.
The biggest wave, you race towards an early grave.
That is Pink Floyd with Breathe, but what is totally unique about what you're hearing is that it was recorded at a show in Hamilton, Ontario, almost 50 years ago, and you can watch the incredible footage of this concert that was filmed on a Super 8 film by a guy named Jim Kelly, or Speedy. When Speedy died, he left all of his Super 8 films to his friend Rob Gronfors. He's got bands like Rush, Led Zeppelin, Alice Cooper. Rob curated all of them and created this new YouTube channel called Speedy Films. Rob, by the way, also has a nickname that everyone uses. His name is Dolph. We talked to Dolph on the phone from his home in Orillia, Ontario. Tell me about your friend Jim, or Speedy as he was known. Who was Speedy?
Speedy was a guy that really was into music, into racing, into photography. So he spent most of his early days from 1971 to 1982 working with a bus touring company that would take people to concerts all over North America. Yeah. He was a guide, so to speak, for the buses and to organize the people. We're parking here. We're leaving at midnight. Be out here, otherwise you're left behind. And so, but throughout this time, he always had his Super 8 camera and his photo camera, and he would do little snippets, because back in the day, 8mm cartridges were only about 3 minutes long.
Right.
So, if you did one cartridge, you wouldn't even get a full song, especially with Pink Floyd, who did songs that were like 8 minutes, 20 minutes, you know. So with the Pink Floyd one, he did a little bit of every song to get the whole concert.
So I'm gonna come back to the Pink Floyd concert in just a moment, but I just want to stay with Speedy for a moment and just ask you, how did you two meet?
We met on a bus tour to Pontiac, Michigan to see Led Zeppelin there in 1977. And we became fast friends at the time because he was working with bands. I was working with the local high school band. I moved on to working with Teenage Head for many, many years, and he was with Wilcox and Max Webster and a couple of other groups that he did work with.
Nice.
And we just kind of gelled. Yeah.
No, that sounds like a lovely relationship.
It was great. Jimmy just, he had the biggest heart of anybody I've known besides me.
That's I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Listen, before he died, he asked you to look after all of his films. What kind of responsibility was that for you?
Well, before he died, I had no idea about any of this stuff, really. He made me the executor of his will back in about 1994. He told me about that, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, Speedy. We live forever, blah, blah, blah. He died on January the 18th, 2022, so I had to clean out his place, found all his films, all his old vintage concert shirts, his ticket stubs, his magazines he'd been collecting, which is like literally in the thousands, Cream, Circus, Hit Parader, Trouser Press, stuff from England, Melody Maker, just all sorts of stuff. And he just, all his posters too. So everything was mine. And I was just like, it took me a few months to get into it. And we came up with the idea, what if we put this stuff on YouTube, come up with a YouTube channel, because Speedy would have loved to show this to everybody. He used to run his little film projector at his house and let people watch while he played some live music of the band we're watching, but it was never like what you see now, So that just, it sparked me to go, this is a great memoriam to my friend, to Jimmy, and the numbers and the subscriptions and the hours that we're getting on this YouTube channel are proving that the world is starting to see it.
I mean, oh my God, like 500,000 views on that Pink Floyd footage. I have to say, most amateur concert footage from the 70s, it looks really grainy, it looks really shaky. I guess not that different from cell phone videos that you take from a show now. But I wish that people could just see the footage, right? The people, but we are on the radio. For the people who can't see this footage, can you just describe what it is about Speedy's footage that makes it so unique?
Well, like, for example, the Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd never recorded anything in 1975. It's just not out there on any YouTube channels or anything. There are some grainy things here and there. His was grainy too, but we met some people who approached us and said, we can turn this into 4K. The process of the 4K really works well with getting rid of the graininess. They work with the colors. The AI really helps a lot.
Right. All right. So let's get back to this Pink Floyd concert, shall we? Dolph, you were at that Pink Floyd show. You were 12 or 13 years old.
Listen, yes, I was.
My father-in-law is also a Hamiltonian, who's also a big Pink Floyd fan. I'm guessing he would have been at that show. It just must be wild seeing that footage now. What do you remember about being there?
Well, I remember, like, when we went, because the stadium was right in the middle of like wartime houses subdivision, like probably even older than that. They were probably like from the 1920s. They had the nice porches with the pillars and little tiny front yards to the street.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's front yard was just full of all these people that, hippies, I'll say,
sure,
passing joints around, drinking, just enjoying the day and having fun. And we had tickets in the stands, so it wasn't a problem. The floor seats, I know there was a fence where I've talked to a few of my friends from Hamilton who a lot of people got into the lysergic acid that day and went crazy.
Dolph, you were 12, man.
I know. My first concert was the Beach Boys in 1970 at the Exhibition Stadium.
Okay.
My older brother would take me to shows. Mom would buy tickets. Thank you, brother. I'm sure he hated me for it, but whatever. But yeah, that was the crazy part. It was just like being a smaller than everybody else, and just looking around at all these people, some of them very spaced out, sitting in the audience, watching the stage, because back in those days they didn't have 3 screens so you could see them up close. You had to either have binoculars or hopefully squint.
Yeah. Also, we should tell people, why did this particular show make history in Hamilton?
It made history because it was the last show of the 1975 tour in North America.
Yeah.
It was overrun because when the gates got torn down, thousands of people poured in there. So there was like, the estimate is like 50,000, but I probably was a few more. But how do you tell that when you couldn't contain it and count tickets? You don't really know.
Right.
It's like Woodstock. They say, 400,000 were there. Some people say there was over 500,000 there. They really don't know. So this was also, it was the last show of the tour. They didn't want to take any of the fireworks that they had home to England, probably some type of gunpowder.
Yeah, that would have been expensive. Yeah, that would have been, yes.
So they decided to blow them all off. Let's have a huge send-off. and unfortunately, some of them hit the scoreboard and wrecked the Hamilton Tiger Cats scoreboard.
Oh, my God.
Yes, they didn't do any real major concerts on the whole stadium until the Tragically Hip played there in 2012.
Oh,
so
wow.
Pretty much a 40-year drought.
The big lesson from this being like, I don't know about these stadium shows. Some crazy stuff tends to happen, apparently.
Right, and you got to remember, this was in the infancy of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, rock started in the late 50s, but it was always contained. The Beatle concerts, they could never hear themselves. And, when Bill Graham started doing shows at the Fillmore East and West, and they started getting into bigger stadium shows, it turned into big business by the mid to early 70s, I think. But you're talking Ontario. This is not America.
Right.
So they were not prepared for the circus that came to town.
Dolph, before I let you go, I just got to ask, what would Speedy think about the fact that all these people are getting to see these shows through his lens?
He would be ecstatic. He would be so happy. It makes my heart boom. I'm a spiritual person, so Speedy is definitely there through my eyes. He's definitely going, way to go, Dolph, way to go.
That's beautiful, man. And you've done an incredible job. It's not just this Pink Floyd concert. There's so many other concerts that you have from his collection on the YouTube channel.
And there's so many more to come.
That's beautiful. I can't wait to see the rest of them. I'm going to go rewatch the Rush one because it was just so much fun to just be kind of seated right there. It's
going to be awesome.
I know that you've just scratched the surface of everything that Speedy left you. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today, man.
Take care.
From the Speedy's Film Archive, that is a bit of Rush playing in Oshawa in 1976. You can go right now to Speedy's Films on YouTube. It is run by Speedy's friend Dolph, Rob Gronfors, who I spoke with from his home in Orillia, Ontario. And you know what? That is it for our show for today. I just want to tell you that you should be here tomorrow. You don't want to miss tomorrow's conversation, okay? Because tomorrow we are talking about the fact that we find ourselves surrounded with our hands up in the air because the Barbie forces have us all surrounded. And the idea of this Barbie movie has led to this massive Barbie marketing hurricane. We're going to break that all down. You know what? I'm going to be here to do that. I hope that you'll be here too. I'll see you then. Bye.